of West Virginia in a race that is the ballot access race for her state. So without her running, it can reduce ballot access throughout the whole state if she doesn't achieve a certain percentage of the ballot. So I just want to kick things off. Erika, why don't you introduce people who you are and why you're running for West Virginia, or governor of West Virginia, I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, my name is Erika Koelenich. I'm, by my normal day job, a trial attorney in a small town in north central West Virginia called Buchanan. I live here with my husband, Carl. Carl actually is the person who got me interested in the Libertarian Party. He ran for Attorney General in 2016. We have a daughter who's 19 who just finished her first year of college, so that's certainly an interesting time. I decided to run for governor because, first and foremost, I think ballot access, especially to the Libertarian Party here in the state of West Virginia, is a very important thing, and it's something that I thought was very worthy of my time. I've never run for office before. I don't fancy myself a politician, but here in West Virginia, we have such good, hardworking, honest people that have been taken advantage of for a very long time by the two-party system in West Virginia. We don't really have, here in our state, folks in our capital who are representing the people of West Virginia. We have people who are representing a political party agenda that's sent to them by the Republicans and the Democrats straight out of Washington, D.C. And not every state needs the same platform politically as Washington, D.C. does. So what's happened here is we have tons and tons of people who feel that they don't have a voice anymore and they're lost in that process. So I decided to run to help empower those people and give them somebody to vote for that they could believe in and trust.
Okay, so your opponent is Jim Justice, is the incumbent, who West Virginia, I would, making an assumption, is typically going to be a Republican state. But he used to be a Democrat, and he changed party lines just to win the election last time. So what sort of concerns, since he has done that, has he stuck to a small government and protecting all of your freedoms line, or is there openings for a libertarian to come in and show, hey, we can do small government better than the Republicans and Democrats and open the market freer? So what sort of options do you think you can bring that he has failed on?
Absolutely. Well, Jim Justice, we call him Big Jim here in West Virginia, is certainly not a small government Republican. He never has been. He increases government every chance he can get. His State of the State address this year focused on an entirely new drug task force that he was going to put together here to continue to chase the citizens of West Virginia down for using drugs. It was actually opposite. West Virginia had traditionally always been Democratic until President Obama, and Jim Justice ran on a Democratic ticket and won. And around 6 months after he was elected, he changed to Republican, which is where he has stayed. He's the epitome of the two-party system being the same. Jim was the same as a Democrat as he is a Republican. He doesn't offer the people any type of solutions in terms of small government, personal liberties and freedoms. He actually is very, very aggressive in terms of passing laws that continue to infringe on those things. So I think that I do bring the people of West Virginia a choice that is a small government choice that can bring practical solutions to West Virginia problems that have never been tried here in West Virginia. So my voice is something new and something that I think people here are excited about.
Okay. So looking through your platform, I know you are promoting a free market healthcare system. And I talked to Anthony Welty of Washington. He's running for insurance commissioner out there. And he was proposing a very open market, free market solution. What sort of healthcare challenges does West Virginia currently have? And what sort of market solutions do you think that we can offer that would solve those problems?
Sure. What we have here in West Virginia is a real access problem. West Virginia is a very rural state. We have often hospitals that will serve a county in a very, very isolated, remote area. And what we've seen happen recently is those hospitals closing because they can't afford to stay open. And the reason that they can't afford to stay open is because most of the patients that are getting care there are Medicare and Medicaid patients. And as we all know, Medicare and Medicaid pay for only about 20% of the overall operations and healthcare costs of any given institution. So it's been very, very difficult. Additionally, it's very hard for doctors here in our state to own independent practices anymore. West Virginia University, ironically, the state university owns the biggest healthcare organization here in our state, and they're absorbing a lot of those small hospitals and doctors' offices, which has been good, certainly for some areas, but in other areas it's made it very, very challenging because those smaller privately owned hospitals can't compete. So I believe that offering a free market healthcare system here in West Virginia, where the government isn't setting prices, isn't telling hospitals and doctors what they can charge for things, will actually result in more affordable costs to the citizens of West Virginia.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I know in West Virginia, in particular, you guys have been fighting, opioid epidemic, I guess would be one way of describing it, or a crisis, which is impacting your health system there significantly. So do you see anything in the criminal justice reform arena to solve this problem instead of continuously having it be emergency medical systems problem? Do you think that there could be any opportunity to transition into a more medically, I guess, not police and ambulances, but more community-driven solutions?
Absolutely. You're correct. West Virginia is well known throughout the United States for our opioid problem here in West Virginia, and I have a lot of friends who work in the recovery industry. And what we know here in West Virginia is that the reason that we have the opioid epidemic is actually because we have a lot of physical laborers here in West Virginia. We have a lot of families that have been coal mining working families that have worked in the timber and logging industry, and those types of things are very, very hard on a body, and you get injuries. And the easiest way for doctors to fix it when you went to the emergency room is to give you some pills, or when you went to the doctor was to give you some pills. And that's become a way of life here. Younger generations start using pills because that's what they've seen their parents do, and it just gets passed on from generation to generation. And very often, especially in a lot of our more urban areas, you see quite a bit of overdoses and treatment to treat drug use that are happening in an emergency care setting. We have seen great things happen, especially here in the city of Huntington with needle exchange programs. We have seen great community type organizations around helping people in recovery. In the particular town I'm from, we have a lot of group recovery homes and group recovery houses. And in the areas of West Virginia where you see those types of treatment facilities, the success rates seem to be a lot higher than in areas that don't have them. So what we know is that risk prevention works. Also, although it's highly stigmatized, which is part of the problem with substance abuse, right, is the stigmatism, is labeling people drug users or drug abusers or addicts and standing in their way of getting a job. What we know is, people that have a addiction problem aren't going to get help until they want to get help. So we can arrest them all we want. We can put them in jail. That's not going to do much good. The old saying here in West Virginia is nobody's ever been on the way to the drug dealer's house and stopped because they realized it was illegal. So having drugs be legal and having our police chase people down and incarcerate them doesn't help at all. It actually harms them when they get out. They don't have skills. They don't know any other way of life other than addiction. So allowing doctors to more easily administer medications such as methadone and Suboxone has a proven track record of helping those who want to recover. So loosening those restrictions here in West Virginia would be one of my goals as well.
Okay, and so on that, I kind of want to read something from your website. You said, for too many of West Virginia's tax dollars are spent pursuing, prosecuting, and incarcerating nonviolent offenders of victimless crimes. These policies should be eradicated, and such offenders should be released and pardoned. So victimless crimes always brings up some questions for a lot of people. What sort of crimes would you define as victimless that West Virginia should stop pursuing and caging people for?
Well, the biggest one is obviously drug possession, drug use. We have our jail bills here in West Virginia are paid by the counties. We have counties in West Virginia that have been on the verge of filing bankruptcy because they couldn't afford their bills for incarceration. And the majority of those incarcerated in West Virginia are due to nonviolent drug offenses. So that's obviously number one. Number two would be things like driving on a suspended license. In West Virginia, you can get your license suspended if you have unpaid fines, unpaid tickets, and you have an awful lot of people who will have their license suspended and they have to get to work, right? It's kind of a circular argument. They have to get to work to pay off the fines, but their license gets suspended because they haven't paid off the fines. But if they're caught driving on a suspended license, you can actually go to jail here in West Virginia.
It's a war tax, essentially, that just it becomes self-fulfilling over and over again. That's horrible.
Absolutely. Prostitution is obviously another one, and too often people confuse human trafficking and prostitution. There are certainly human trafficking travesties that happen every day, but there are also the willing exchange of sex for money. And if you have two willing adult participants who are competent, there's no victim there. So those types of crimes, if I were governor, I would do my best to repeal.
Okay, very good. So on that there, another thing, West Virginia has been impacted by the reduction in coal use across the country and export coal throughout the whole world. So the economy needs a boost there. What sort of proposals or legalizations or regulation removals do you think you can do to help support the communities that have been impacted by the reduction in coal mining throughout your whole state?
Sure. That's a great question, and it really is a problem that is unique to West Virginia. For years, West Virginia has sold its soul to the highest coal bidder. When the world market for coal started to change, it became oil and gas. We started selling our soul to the oil and gas companies, and West Virginia would offer anything to get those companies here. Tax breaks, environmental regulation loosening, just anything to get those types of companies here. And what they would do is they would come into West Virginia, use our land, take our resources, and then leave. And it had no lasting effect on the economy here in West Virginia. And what I think has happened is that politicians in the past here in West Virginia have focused too much on trying to bring businesses into West Virginia. And that is really, really misguided and misplaced in my view. If you would come to West Virginia, you would see the most beautiful landscapes, some of the most beautiful landscapes in the United States. You would see small towns that are thriving with art galleries and small music venues. Our state, in order to go forward, really just needs to use the assets that we have here in West Virginia and make it easier for those people to do business. West Virginia has a great, great small business and entrepreneurial spirit, but it's encumbered by our state capital. We have very, very difficult licensing and regulations here in West Virginia. It's almost impossible for somebody who doesn't have, a degree in business to figure out how to open up a business here in West Virginia because of all the licensing and regulations. So my plan for economic development is loosening some of those onerous regulations and licensing requirements to allow businesses to more easily operate, and focusing on the assets that we already have in West Virginia in terms of our arts communities and our small towns, and eliminating the regulation that prohibits those types of entities from thriving.
Okay. So definitely removing regulations for any entrepreneur. I know anyone starting a business always looks at it and they say, oh, I could just go out there and start, but they're immediately met with red tape and regulations and fees and licensing and all sorts of permitting. So I think removing that is a great step forward for any state. Another topic that is really huge right now for everyone is education in general. So I know that you have stated that you feel that parents and teachers are in the best position to decide what's best for the students. What sort of proposals would you suggest for improving the education system in your state for your state's children?
Well, the first thing would be elimination of standardized testing. What we know is that standardized testing has no relation whatsoever to what kids are learning. It merely tests whether or not someone is a good test taker. And what happens far too often is you have teachers that are fantastic teachers, but for whatever reason, the system has decided to judge them on the outcomes of tests. So you have a system that's imbalanced. You have standardized testing that is used to hold teachers to a certain standard, but students have no accountability in terms of those standardized testing. So you can have students that do terrible in standardized testing and they get moved to the next grade, but the teacher, who may be a fantastic teacher, gets disciplined because he or she had low levels on their standardized testing. And the new trend to dictate exactly what teachers are going to teach and how they're going to teach it has really ruined classrooms. Teachers are professionals. Politicians aren't professional teachers. Teachers go to school to learn how to teach. They are in the classroom. They see the kids. Yet for some reason, how they need to teach the material comes dictated to them through Washington and in our state through Charleston, and that just doesn't make much sense. So first of all, I think we need to change the standardized testing and the dictation on how teachers are going to teach. The next step, and this is something about education that no one wants to talk about, you're not going to improve education until you improve how those kids are being treated at home, what's happening at home, and how involved parents are in the process. If you have a child who is going home in the evenings and is growing up in an environment of drug abuse, or growing up in an environment where they don't eat. We have a situation here in West Virginia where sometimes the lunch and the breakfast that kids get at school is the only time that they eat. And a lot of our school districts have done very well with backpack programs and sending kids home with food. So until we realize that we need to put a focus as a society on helping those homes, we're not going to fix education either.
Okay, so what are some solutions that we can do to improve the opportunities for those people who do need that help? What sort of things would you recommend you do from the governor's position? Because a lot of it's going to have to come through state legislature for you to sign. So what's something you would call on the legislature to pass to you?
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about. Drugs is a big thing. Right now, you have a lot of people who would benefit greatly from marijuana to treat medical use. And although we have legalized marijuana here for medicinal use in West Virginia, it's still not up and running. So what happens? Those people turn to opioids, which are much more addictive. It causes them problems because things like marijuana and drugs are illegal. You have people engaged in illegal activity to get marijuana and drugs, where if they could just go down to Walmart or to their neighbor's house and get some weed, they wouldn't be in a dark alley meeting a drug dealer, stealing because the prices were so high, because the risk is so high, because it's illegal. And the drug use is what affects most of our youth here in West Virginia. So by legalizing, even just as a starting point, cannabis, we're going to help so many children in West Virginia. We're going to help so many families in West Virginia. And lots of times people don't think of it from that aspect, but it's very, very true.
Absolutely. And we talk about having parents home. If someone is in a position where they do have an addiction or they are in a drug-seeking behavior, not that we're saying that parents should go out and use drugs, but the reality is that there are going to be people who do it. I still think that someone who can be at home is going to be a much more positive impact in someone's life than a parent who is in jail. And I think that's the point you're getting to here is we need our parents at home with families, not locked in cages taking up tax dollars. So,
that's correct.
So another thing, we haven't gotten to it, but someone's going to ask eventually, what makes you qualified to run for governor? What is your background that makes you the choice for governor of West Virginia? Sure.
Well, I am a trial lawyer by profession. So I've been practicing right around 16 years, I think, if I'm doing the math in my head. So for 16 years of my life, I've gotten up every day, I've gone to work, and I have represented the everyday working West Virginian in courtrooms. I understand more uniquely than anybody else what their problems are. I understand what it's like to run a business because I do run my own law firm. I understand what it's like to have a problem, to gather all the evidence and then come up with a solution. I think a lot of the times what we see happening out of Charleston is, which is our state capital, is politicians deciding what result they want and then looking for the evidence afterwards to support that result. Also, I'm just a real person. My opponent is, and Jim Justice is the wealthiest man in the state of West Virginia. He is a billionaire coal baron. Both candidates in this race have a lot of special interest behind them. They're going to have a lot of favors to pay back when they're in office. I'm just an everyday West Virginian girl who runs a business here in West Virginia. I'm not going to have anybody to pay back. The only thing that I'm going to have to do when I get there is represent the citizens of West Virginia that put me there. I think more than anybody else in this election that uniquely qualifies me to be governor.
That's a great answer and a great way to answer it. So what do you need to move your campaign forward? Every campaign needs money. Every campaign needs donations, volunteers, grassroots organizations. So what do you need right now to move your campaign forward? Do you need the audience to get out there and just start making some Erika Koelenich memes and start getting the social media game going? Do you need donations, money, signs? What can we do to help you achieve your goals?
The answer is yes, all of those things. So I definitely need money. As I mentioned, I'm running against a billionaire and a millionaire here in West Virginia. I am neither of those things. So I certainly need money. People can donate to my campaign by going to my website. It's my last name, Koelenich, Kolenich, 4wv.com, and you can donate there. I also just need people to spread the word, as I indicated, because, here, and I think maybe we were talking about this earlier before we went live, but here in West Virginia, typically the way Libertarians have always campaigned in the past is by going out to fairs and festivals, which we have a ton of here in West Virginia, but this year we're not going to be doing any of that. So it's really, really important, since I don't have millions and millions of dollars to smear my name all over the TV, that people just spread my name. Share my social media posts. If you're a West Virginian, get in touch with me. I'd love to have you volunteer. If you're not a West Virginian and you just like spreading liberty, then just share my social media posts. Memes would be great as long as they're nice. Don't say mean things.
Be nice. Don't
Yeah.
say mean things. Okay. Everyone remember that. Be nice and don't say mean things. Okay, so with that said, a lot of people, you mentioned people across the country, sharing your message and things like that. Everyone, when they start getting involved in politics, one of the things they want to know is how do they get involved? So what would you recommend that someone wants to get involved in their local state party, their affiliate, or their county affiliate? What would I can't even talk right now. I'm sorry. What advice would you give people who just want to get involved everywhere and help right now for the libertarian movement?
The easiest thing to do is just find somebody that you feel that you connect with on social media and reach out and just say, hey, I'm interested in helping or getting involved. That person can almost always put you in touch with someone who can use you somewhere, whether or not it's an affiliate or a candidate. I know here in West Virginia, the Libertarians, we're a small group, and I mean, we're growing, but we know almost everybody who's involved in the movement. So if someone were to reach out to me and say, hey, I'm down in Boone County and I'd like to get involved in your campaign, or I'd like to get involved in the party, I know exactly who to put them in contact with. I find that libertarians are generally really friendly. So if you find someone that is sharing a message on social media that you relate to, just shoot them a message and say, I really like what you're saying. How do I get involved and how do I help? And that's all it will take. And believe me, we will put you to work.
All right. That's a great answer. And everyone who joined us tonight, thank you. And I will be live again tomorrow night, same time, 8 p.m. Erika, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I hope, I wish you the best of luck in your election. So everyone go to Erika Koelenich for West Virginia. The links are in the description wherever you're watching this. Make sure you like this, comment, share, subscribe, and share the message out with everyone. So everyone, thank you very much for joining us. And Erika, once again, good luck. And hopefully we'll talk again before the election.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.